Reform UK's rise in recent polls is nothing short of remarkable. According to the very latest poll by Find Out Now, a very reliable...
There's more bad news for UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer. In the same week, an Ipsos poll found more than 50% of people feel disappointed.
Labour's worst nightmare just came true. Reform UK, once dismissed as a fringe party, has surged past them in a shock council by-election.
Profile developments within Reform suggests that we are now witnessing a pivotal, transformative moment in British politics.
Is this the beginning of the end for Keir Starmer's leadership? As Reform UK's membership swells to 100,000, we'll explore how this political earthquake could reshape British politics forever. In a stunning turn of events, Reform UK has just claimed victory in the Blackbrook St Helens Council by-election, pushing Labour into second place.
Reform is now polling at 25% with support from 1 in 4 voters, placing them in a tight race with Labour.
This unexpected triumph marks a significant milestone for the relatively new political party that's been challenging the established order. When Reform UK first emerged on the political scene, many dismissed it as a flash in the pan. Critics argued it lacked the infrastructure and support to make any real impact, but recent developments tell a different story. The party's growing support and surging membership numbers are forcing political commentators to eat their words. So what's behind Reform UK's meteoric rise? Dissatisfaction with mainstream parties seems to be a key factor. Voters are increasingly frustrated with what they perceive as broken promises and business-as-usual politics from both Labour and the Conservatives. Reform UK has positioned itself as a fresh alternative, tapping into this discontent and offering voters a chance to voice their frustration at the ballot box. The numbers paint a clear picture of Reform UK's growing influence. Recent polls show the party's support has more than doubled in just a few months. In some surveys, they're even neck and neck with Labour, a scenario that would have seemed unthinkable not long ago.
Replicated at a general election, Reform would go from only 5 seats in the House of Commons today to closer to around 100 seats.
Perhaps the most telling statistic is Reform UK's membership figures. The party recently announced it has reached 100,000 members, a milestone that puts them in the same league as some of the established political parties. This surge in support isn't just about numbers on paper, it's changing the political landscape in real time. Traditional strongholds are no longer safe, as the Blackbrook by-election result demonstrates. Both Labour and the Conservatives are being forced to reassess their strategies, knowing that Reform UK could potentially split the vote in crucial constituencies. As we look towards future elections, the potential impact of Reform UK's rise can't be overstated. Could we see more upset victories like the one in Blackbrook? Will the party's growing support translate into parliamentary seats? These are questions that are keeping political strategists up at night.
And this assertion is backed up by that Find Out Now poll, which shows that Reform UK's support has increased sharply over the last few months.
With Reform UK reaching 100,000 members, it's clear they're no longer just a protest vote. They've become a serious challenge to the established parties, forcing a rethink of the traditional two-party system. As we turn our attention to Labour's struggles under Keir Starmer's leadership, it's worth considering how much of their decline can be attributed to Reform UK's unexpected rise.
What we are seeing, what we are witnessing at the moment, is a traditional two-party system morphing into a multi-party system.
While Reform UK celebrates its newfound success, Keir Starmer's Labour Party is facing a crisis of its own making. Remember when Labour was expected to be the main opposition, holding the government to account? Well, those expectations have been turned on their head. Let's examine the series of missteps that have led Labour to this precarious position.
Reform UK's rise in recent polls is nothing short of remarkable. According to the very latest poll by Find Out Now, a very reliable...
The recent by-election results paint a grim picture for Labour. Their vote share plummeted by a staggering 18.4%, a drop that sent shockwaves through the party. This isn't just a one-off incident either. Since July, Labour has suffered a net loss of 25 council seats, primarily to the Conservatives. Keep in mind, this comes just 5 months after winning a substantial majority. It's a dramatic reversal of fortunes that has left many Labour supporters scratching their heads.
There's more bad news for UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer. In the same week, an Ipsos poll found more than 50% of people feel disappointed.
So what's behind this sudden decline? The answer lies in a series of unpopular decisions and broken promises under Starmer's leadership. Take, for instance, the $4 billion tax hike Labour recently proposed. In a time when many Britons are struggling with the cost of living, this move has been seen as tone-deaf at best. Adding insult to injury, Labour also announced plans to remove the winter fuel payment for millions of pensioners. These decisions have alienated core Labour voters and left many questioning whether the party still represents their interests.
And I thank the honourable member for Harborough for calling this debate. He must find it excruciatingly embarrassing how badly the previous government dealt with this issue.
But it's not just about specific policies. Starmer's leadership has been marred by a series of U-turns and controversial stances that have left Labour's base feeling betrayed. The party that once prided itself on being the voice of the working class now seems out of touch with its traditional supporters. This disconnect is reflected in the polls, where Labour's support continues to decline.
We're now ahead of Labour. In others, we're ahead of the Conservatives. What's clear is that three parties are polling in the 20s, and we're the one on the rise. And
inside the party, dissent is growing. There are increasing calls for a change in leadership as members express frustration over Starmer's direction. The internal dynamics of the Labour Party are strained, with many feeling that Starmer's approach isn't resonating with core supporters. Some are even drawing unfavorable comparisons to previous Labour leaders during times of crisis, arguing that Starmer's leadership lacks the charisma and vision needed to unite the party and appeal to voters. The result of all this turmoil, Labour now finds itself nearly tied with Reform UK in national polls.
The problem with welcoming diversity is if you do it in too big a level, you get division. And we're seeing that in many of our towns.
A situation that would have been unthinkable just a few months ago. As we look towards upcoming elections, the implications of Labour's crisis are profound. Will Starmer be able to turn things around, or is Labour headed for an electoral disaster? The answer to this question could reshape British politics for years to come. As we look towards the May 2025 elections, it's clear that British politics is entering uncharted territory. The traditional two-party system, long dominated by Labour and the Conservatives, is facing its most serious challenge in decades. Reform UK's meteoric rise and Labour's simultaneous decline could lead to a seismic shift in the political landscape.
A new poll has put Nigel Farage's Reform UK party ahead of Labour for the first time.
Nigel Farage and Reform UK emerging as a formidable political force that's now reshaping the traditional two-party system.
The upcoming elections for county councils, unitary authorities, and metropolitan boroughs will be a crucial test. Will Reform UK continue its momentum and secure significant representation, or will the established parties manage to stem the tide? The uncertainty surrounding these questions has injected a palpable sense of excitement into British politics.
Rising from under 20% to 25% of the vote here in December.
This potential realignment reminds us of past political upheavals, like the Liberal Democrats' surge in the early 2000s. But the scale and speed of Reform UK's ascent suggest we might be witnessing something even more dramatic. As voters increasingly look beyond traditional party lines, we're left to wonder, is this the beginning of the end for the two-party system that has defined British politics for generations?